Gizmo, what should be a good opening for this video? Great, you know what? I think that'll be the opening for the video. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to my new channel, Sellout Boy. I'm selling merch. You can pick up merch at the back of the venue. It's back over there, and every dollar helps. I'm telling you. Okay, bye Gizmo, I guess. Okay, focus. What are we doing today? Well, today, clearly, as you can see laid out in front of me, we are talking about a wide range of products, of things you can buy, of controllers. Now, if you're a fan of this channel, then you might be aware of my, we'll just say, affinity for a company known as 8BitDo. 8Bit, I don't give a shit. I've talked about their controllers a lot in my videos. I made dedicated videos for their retro controller modding products, projects, things, whatever. And I still stand by with a lot of what I said in those videos. The thing is, though, all of that is coming into question with this one. So a little bit ago, 8BitDo reached out to me and said, hey, you want some free controllers? And I, of course, said yes, because you would say yes. Who the fuck wouldn't say yes to free controllers, or free anything, really? Especially in this economy. So that's what I have here. I have 4 controllers, brand new, that were shipped to me from 8BitDo, and I'm here to talk about it, give my impressions on them, say what I do and don't like, because that's what I am now. I am a talking head on your TV screen, and I'm here to tell you what products are good and bad. Speaking of that, we need to have an important conversation about that. If you don't care and you just want to know about the controllers and if they're good or not, spoiler alert, they all are good for varying different reasons. There will be chapters in the timeline down here, and you can skip to whichever controller you're the most interested in. Hopefully you'll see a bunch of them on the thumbnail, or maybe you'll see the chapter names. I don't fucking know. But if you're here looking for a specific controller, you can find it. Because if I don't include this important forward about sponsored content, I'm going to feel like a massive cunt. So let's get into it. Okay, so number 1, my opinions on all of 8BitDo's products are now inherently unreliable, simply because I accepted free products. I'm not being paid directly by 8BitDo. They're not watching this video before it goes live. They're not making any changes to anything. Matter of fact, I tried to reach out to them because there were a little bit of some shipping, not there was like scuffs, right? Like some controllers arrived at certain times, others didn't. And so I was trying to reach out to be like, hey, are we still going with all of the controllers that we agreed on? Or is there like, are we only working with the few controllers? And for better or for worse, I didn't get any word back from them. So, you know, they have no say in what I say in this video. But like I was alluding to before, my opinions on these controllers are going to be colored by the fact that I received them for free. There's like a couple $100 worth of tech here on my desk. You don't think I'm not gonna be grateful for being sent all of this for free? Fuck no. So what I implore you to do is to not take anything I say in this video as gospel, and I would highly encourage you to find some other videos. They're probably, I don't know where YouTube is moving them. I think they're, which side of the video am I on? They're probably down here somewhere. You can probably find more videos in your related tab talking about other like these controllers that I'm talking about here in this video. You can go watch those. You can form an opinion before you decide to spend your hard-earned shekels on these controllers. Because I am just one man, and trust me when I say I have some insane, hot fucking garbage opinions on a lot of things. So I am not some arbiter of truth. I just care way too much. Anyway, enough of that bullshit. Let us talk about what we're here to actually talk about, which is the controllers. I'm going to be going in order of what I believe to be the best value all the way down to the worst value. So it's kind of like a staggered ranking here of like how much money you're paying for the controllers and what the quality of them is and all of that fun stuff. I'm going to be retreading a lot of ground from my other 8BitDo controller videos. So if you've already seen those, you might be experiencing a little bit of deja vu here. So we're gonna start here talking about this green little guy right here. This is the ultimate 2C. It is 8BitDo's budget-friendly option. And this controller comes in, let me check my notes again, $30. So for a controller, for $30, a wireless controller at that, that's a that's a pretty good deal in my opinion, especially one as high quality as whatever Apido makes. And you can do either Bluetooth or 2.4 gigahertz with their little wireless dongle. It also works wired. There's a lot of fun stuff here. So a lot of fun stuff that comes in the box, you see. And if you know anything about me and how autistic I can be about controllers, I do find it a little bit weird that after 8BitDo was working a lot with Microsoft and Xbox, they decided to switch their button layouts to the Xbox layout. If you know anything about controllers and you care at all about where the buttons are placed on it, that might upset you, that might not. I don't fucking know, but it is certainly something that I noticed. Because before on their other controllers, they would have the Nintendo layout where A would instead be the right face button instead of the bottom face button. And I feel like I'm nitpicking here at this point. Let's move on. A couple of other things that we can talk about with the controller is that they've added a couple new buttons. Actually, no, they didn't add new buttons. They just moved buttons around. So with this new line of controllers, with like this new generation, I guess I can call it, they have these new shoulder buttons. There are now 3 buttons on the shoulders. There's, what is it? There's RB and RT, right bumper, right trigger, but then there's an R4 and an L4 button. I'm sure in the B-roll that I'm gonna be putting over this, I'll give you a better picture of what I'm talking about. But basically they're like 2 new shoulder buttons that are smaller that you kind of have somewhat easy access. Oh no, it's pretty easy access, but I like to press on the shoulder buttons with the tip of my finger rather than like the middle part of my finger, and I know that some people do it differently. Like I said, I think way too much about this shit. So one thing that I would run into occasionally is that I would occasionally push the new R4 and L4 buttons instead of the bumper themselves. But I can just change that by repositioning my finger, I guess. It is another nitpick that I have to talk about here. So another thing that we can talk about with this whole generation of controllers is that they've moved on. 8BitDo has moved on from the Hall effect joysticks that I have come to love and shill constantly on this channel, and instead are using TMR joysticks. TMR stands for tunneling magnetoresistance. So a little bit of a 101 here on control sticks. If you, oh, here we go, perfect example. Here we have a really tiny Xbox controller. This controller uses potentiometer joysticks, meaning that, fuck, how do I explain this? Okay, so when you push the control stick forward, backward, left, or right, you're, pointing the stick in a different direction, but you're also moving 2 circles of graphite, and those circles of graphite are rubbing against the housing of the controller, and the rubbing of those graphite circles equals a signal of electricity, and that signal of electricity can be measured and put into the controller and translated into something the game can understand. That was a very horrible, very quick summation of potentiometers, but that's basically what it is. Now, there are issues with this setup. Main thing is that you have 2 physical discs of graphite rubbing against each other constantly. And so what happens when 2 physical objects rub against each other? Friction happens, and little by little, some of that material is going to be lost and just turned into dust. What are we talking about? Okay, so Hall effect joysticks, that was the next step. And they do some really cool stuff with the Hall effect. I am not smart enough to properly describe how Hall effect works. Basically, it's magnets. You're using magnets and electromagnetism to make a signal, measure a signal, turn that into analog movement on a screen. Now, the benefit of magnets and electromagnetism is that the 2 magnets that you're using to measure this signal in, they don't need to physically touch. They can just communicate with each other through fucking magnetism, because this is magic now. We're living in magic world. So what that means functionally for you is that Hall effect joysticks are going to last a lot longer than potentiometer joysticks. And I'm sure a lot of us out there, a lot of you and a lot of me, what does that mean? We've all experienced stick drift at some point in our lives, whether that be the fabled Joy-Con drift, or I know the PlayStation 5 controllers have been dying a lot as of late, and Xbox is, they're stuck in the past, so of course they still use potentiometer joysticks. So Hall effect joysticks were going to be the next step. But guess what, fucker? Now there's a new kid on the block, and it's this tunneling magnetoresonance stuff. I don't know what the difference is between the two. Let's find out together. Technology makes use of ferromagnetism and quantum tunneling. What the fuck does that even mean? What do you mean quantum tunneling? Think of it as an upgraded Hall effect joystick. This makes joysticks much more precise, pick up on even smaller movements. Not only is the technology more accurate, but it also consumes less power. Oh, it consumes less power. That's pretty good. Okay, you know what? Here, this is probably the best way I can describe this. Imagine if Hall effect joysticks were a 1080p picture on a screen, where the density of pixels on the screen is a lot lower than something like a 4K display. TMR joysticks, in this analogy, are a 4K display, where Hall effect are like 1080p, maybe closer to 1440p, but there is a resolution increase, which means you get a more precise image. And in the case of joysticks, you get more precise movement, because we all need more precise joysticks in our lives, right? Another thing that these controllers do a little bit differently is that instead of a rubber dome membrane for the D-pads, they're instead using micro switches. They feel really similar. They really do feel similar. But if you're holding an older controller from 8BitDo, hold on, there's one over here. Let me go grab it. This is something that is going to be damn near impossible for me to describe, because you really need to have these controllers in your hand. Okay, here's a good example. If you happen to have let's say a Nintendo Switch Pro controller, or a Wiimote, or something along those lines, a Nintendo controller with a D-pad, go ahead and pick it up and just put your thumb in the center of the D-pad, and just sort of rock your thumb around and really get a feel for how the D-pad feels in your hand. You know what I mean? It's kind of a soft, like dome-ish kind of texture to it. That's because it is a rubber dome membrane that you're pushing down to connect the thing to the controller and make a signal. It's a button. It's a fucking button with a rubber membrane. Whereas these new ones use individual micro switches to determine what part of the D-pad you are pressing. And in my experience, there really isn't a functional difference between the two D-pads, but there is definitely a difference in feel. The best way I can describe these D-pads is that they feel sharper. They feel clickier, more clicky. They feel, yes, it's not going to provide any sort of functional difference. Maybe these things are going to be more reliable in the future. Maybe they won't. I don't fucking know. Considering that each part of the D-pad is an individual micro switch, maybe that could be adding more points of failure into your controller, but we're not really going to know that until we've owned these controllers for a few years and we can see how they wear down over time. Long story short, I don't know, but the D-pads do feel a bit different, and if you care about controllers like I do, then you might notice that when you're actually playing games. Especially if you play like 2D platforming games like I do. So all in all, I think that this controller, this Ultimate 2C, is worth the asking price, especially for only $30. And at time of recording, I was able to find it for like $22. So you can probably find some pretty good deals on this thing. If you just want a controller and you just want to play games, this is a great option. If you have a younger sibling, or like a younger cousin, or you have a kid, I don't fucking know, this would be an excellent controller to give to them, because it still feels good in the hands, but it isn't going to break the bank if they end up trashing it. And a lot of the same points I made about the 2C apply to this one, the Ultimate 2 controller, because it is just a souped up, or more accurately, this is a downgraded version of this. So this is the Ultimate 2 controller. The name is really weird, but I mean, it's a marketing thing, I guess. I have talked about the previous version of this controller before, the 8BitDo Ultimate controller. Please put it somewhere on the camera where people can see it. I talked about this controller in a different video, and spoiler alert for that video and for this one, hey, guess what? I like this controller. I think it has a lot of cool features. And to summarize everything that I've talked about before, I do think that the Ultimate 2 controller is still worth the money. Biggest differences between the 2C and the 2 is that the 2 comes with a little charging dock. Look at that, how fun is that? Now this charging dock is not just a charging dock, it's also a connection point for the controller. So in the B-roll here, I'm going to show that there is a little wireless receiver hidden in the bottom of the charging dock, and functionally what it means is that you can have your charging dock connected to your computer or your console. I'm not here to judge. You can have the dock connected to whatever device you're using. You can pick up the controller and the wireless receiver will activate and you can start playing games just like that. And then you can put the controller back down and the controller will turn off and it'll start charging, and it is so seamless. It is so nice. I don't know why everyone doesn't do this, because it is just that good. But there are a few other differences besides just the charging dock, namely the back buttons. They are present on the Ultimate controller, the Ultimate 2, the Pro, they're present on a lot of 8BitDo's controllers, but for some reason they're not present on the 2C, which I'm not entirely upset about because, well, we'll talk about that later on in this video. Another thing that I noticed is that there are two little switches on the back of the controller, and they allow you to turn the triggers from full motion, like analog triggers, into something that's more clicky and more immediate, like with the Switch Pro controllers. Now, I am not the biggest fan of the clicky triggers on the Switch controllers. I think that that's kind of lame, but the fact that you can choose whether or not you want to have the clicky triggers or not, or you can have one that's clicky, one that's not clicky, I think that that's cool. I do like the added feature of it. You have more choice with your controller and how you want to use it. I think that that's nice. And something else that I found interesting, but not really game-changing, is that the base of the analog sticks have rings of lights around them, and they react to what you do when you press the control sticks, which is neat, I guess. Listen, as someone who went through an entire phase of having fancy lights and setting up those lights and, you know, doing stuff with the keyboard, doing stuff with lights on the fans, and just the headache of trying to set up those lights to make them look fancy for the appeal of no one but yourself, I find that to be a little bit foolish. I'm not really a fan of having a bunch of LEDs on everything, especially on a controller where if I'm up at 3 in the morning playing Elden Ring, because we've all done that, to be sitting in a dark room illuminated only by my monitor, and then just to have my hands kind of light up back at me and kind of distract me from the game. I don't know. This feels like a nitpick, but it is something that has affected my overall enjoyment with this controller. But you can turn those off, thankfully, in the software. We will get to the software in a bit. Now, I know I said at the beginning of this video that I was ordering these controllers based on how good of a value they are, right? Based on what you're paying for the controllers and, you know, what you get with the whole package. I started with the 2C because I thought it was the best value for money. I don't want to say that this next controller, the Pro 3, is the least valuable in terms of, you know, what you get for the price you pay. I think the Pro 3 and the Ultimate 2 are about equal in terms of value, but this one is my favorite out of the bunch, hands down. The Pro 3 is my favorite for, like, I don't know, maybe like 2 reasons, but 2 can be a lot if they're, you know, pretty interesting inclusions. Namely is that we have a charging dock for the PlayStation form factor, the symmetrical joystick layout. If you've heard my autistic ramblings about controllers before, then you would know that I am more of a fan of the PlayStation layout rather than the Xbox layout. And I do think that 8BitDo has perfected the layout in terms of, you know, hand feel and where the buttons are placed and how good the D-pad feels, a lot of that stuff. And then adding on a couple of more buttons, adding on the choice of clicky or analog triggers, adding on the charging dock, all of that is excellent. But there are a couple more gimmicks about this controller that I think are quite interesting. So number one, if you open the little hatch on the charging dock, you will find the wireless dongle that is present in the Ultimate 2 controller, but you'll also find spare button caps and a cool magnet / suction cup thing. If you take out that magnet suction cup thing, you can replace the button tops and change the order of the buttons, which is a very interesting solution to the problem that I posed in my controller rambling video. And I also briefly mentioned it here in this video, like the Xbox layout and the Nintendo layout are just inherently different. Like if you wanted to press X on a controller, depending on what controller you're using, the X button is in a completely different place. So being able to just take the buttons off and switch them around to whatever you feel most comfortable with, I think that that's really cool. Is it a gimmick for the controller just for marketing? Probably. Is it an actual like genuine innovation that every controller needs to have? Probably not. But it is cool. And you know what else is cool in a really gimmicky kind of way are the replacement joystick toppers. So when you buy a Pro 3 controller, you're going to get balls. What you can do is you can physically yank off the joystick tops on the Pro 3 and replace them with balls. And when you have both of them on, it makes it look like an arcade stick, which I don't know what the purpose of this is. I'm going to be just blunt with you. I don't know what I don't know why they did this. I think it's neat that they're toying around with different form factors for control sticks, and I do think that there is something to be said about having the ball top on the right stick. So, okay, hear me out on this one. In order to get the same input on a ball top versus a standard top, because the ball top is a lot taller, you have to move your thumb more to get a similar input, which sounds like it would be more of a nuisance, but in reality, what it means is that you could theoretically be more precise with the ball top on the right stick. So if you're using the ball top to aim in a controller shooting game, like, I don't know, fucking Space Marine 2, I found it was personally easier for me to be a little bit more precise with my aiming with the ball top than with the standard topper. Now, is this going to be true for every person who uses this controller? Probably not. I'm just a fucking weirdo and I like to experiment with dumb gimmicky features like these. But I can respect the effort put into experimenting with this. And if I'm allowed to soapbox here for a minute, I think it is a good thing to push companies like these into experimenting with more bizarre, outlandish features, because you genuinely never know what's gonna take off and what's going to be the next big thing. Case in point, the fucking Steam controller. This controller it wasn't well received, but the Steam Deck and the new Steam controller still have those fucking trackpads, and the PS4 and the PS5 controller also have trackpads. Trackpads sound insane on the face of it, but when you actually start using them, hey, they can be useful in some applications. Speaking of looking insane on the outside and being just really interesting, the arcade controller. So I'm gonna be skipping over a lot of discussion with this because I actually do plan on making an arcade controller video in the future. So we're gonna skip over a lot of the initial shock of like, why is the stick replaced with 4 individual buttons? What the fuck are all of these weird kidney bean buttons on there? What is this controller? All I can say right now is that this controller is made to be used with fighting games. So games like Tekken or Guilty Gear or Street Fighter. And the interesting thing about fighting games is that a lot of work is being done with the stick, because not only are you handling movement with that, you're also handling blocking and doing your motion inputs and ducking and jumping and like everything. Everything is done with the stick. So when you separate it into 4 individual buttons, you unironically get way more control over what you're doing in the game. I was skeptical about it. I thought to myself, like, there was no fucking way that this was gonna be comfortable, that this was gonna be worth it. And when Abido finally sent this to me and I got it working, we'll get to that. I was playing Guilty Gear on this controller and it took a lot of effort to adjust to it. God help you if you're trying to adjust from a regular controller to something like a leverless arcade controller. It's gonna take a long time, trust me. But as someone who has played with an arcade stick for damn near a decade, probably 15 years at this point, I am fully on board with leverless life, man. I fucking love this controller. I love this thing to no end. And also, okay, if you have roommates or you don't want to annoy anyone with your controller, don't get this one, because like, I'm just gonna hold the microphone to it and I'm gonna start hitting buttons. Just listen to this. It's really fucking loud. And the reason why it is so loud is because there are clicky keyboard switches on this thing, which means 2 things. One, that you can count on the reliability of the buttons being pressed over and over and over again, but also if those buttons happen to break on you, you could just replace the switch on the inside. Like, these are commercially available key switches. They're not hard to find. They're not unique. They're not proprietary. They're just key switches. but I will say this is true of most, if not all, leverless arcade controllers. This is not something unique to 8BitDo on this one. So I don't want to blow too much smoke up their asses for having what is considered to be a basic feature. Speaking of basic features, this thing plays wired, wireless, with both 2.4 gigahertz and Bluetooth, it looks like. Now, the funny thing about this controller, and something that I don't understand why they did it this way. So on the top corner here, you can see a dial that switches it from Bluetooth mode to X input mode. And when you're on Bluetooth mode on this arcade controller, it defaults to the Switch layout of buttons. But if you're on X input, it defaults to the Xbox layout. And these are two completely separate modes for some reason. Like here in the B-roll, I'm gonna flick this thing back and forth to X input and switch Bluetooth mode. You can see the lights light up underneath the buttons that show you what button is what. Like, it's such a bizarre fucking design decision. Like, I don't understand why they did it this way. I'm sure there's a reason. Maybe it was easier for them to manufacture it this way. I don't know. And then next to this power dial, you can also see a lock and unlock switch. They say on their website and in the instruction manuals that this is a tournament lock. It's meant to be used during tournament play, so you don't accidentally press the start and select buttons. If you don't know anything about fighting games and fighting game tournaments, if you pause the game accidentally even during the middle of a match, you're disqualified, like immediately. So having a tournament lock is a good thing, but there are some caveats to the tournament lock. And guess what? We're gonna talk about that stuff right now. Okay, so the leverless arcade controller is simultaneously my favorite controller that I own from this collection, and also my least favorite, and it's pretty much purely to do with the software side of things. So 8BitDo, with all of their controllers, has a software client that you can download that you can use to remap controls, set up macros, set up different profiles that you can switch between on the physical controller themselves. You can do a lot of really cool stuff with the software, but there is no Linux support, like at all. You can only download a Windows version of the software or a fucking Mac version. Like, I'm not sorry for saying this. Who the fuck plays video games on a Mac, dude? Like, actually, do any of you play games on Mac? I did for a bit, and let me tell you, it sucks. And again, we're skipping over a lot here. This is fighting game stuff we're talking about. There's a setting on leverless controllers called your SOCD. SOCD stands for Simultaneous Opposite Cardinal Directions. So if you replace an arcade stick, like the actual stick itself, with 4 buttons, what happens when you press left and right at the same time? Might sound like a bit of a stupid question, but if you can input both left and right at the same time, that fundamentally breaks every fighting game. Because whether or not you're holding left or right, that's part of the game. That's part of blocking. That's part of cross-ups. That's like mix-ups and shit. If you can block both sides at the same time, we're not even getting into how this completely breaks charge characters. Okay, before I get started on this, and before I spoil my entire fighting game controller video, I will just say that SOCD is a very important option, and it is something that you have to be able to tinker with in software with controllers. And because I functionally do not have access to the software on Linux, that means I can't mess with the SOCD. I prefer a last input SOCD. What that means is that if I'm holding the right button and I press left, the controller will then register left, as it is the last input that was detected from the 4 cardinal directions. The default setup is a neutral input. So if you're holding right and then you press left, the controller will register a neutral input, as if you're not pressing the stick at all. The tournament standard is the neutral option, but I don't play in tournaments, and I prefer last input because it allows me to do Heavenly Potemkin Busters at lightning speed. So if I couldn't set the SOCD options to last input, I couldn't use this controller because that's just what I'm used to. So I had to do the unthinkable. I had to get out my original Windows 10 hard drive, and I had to put it into the BrokeBox 360 back here. I had to install the software and set the SOCD settings on there. And while I was in there, I also set up some macros with the Jelly Bean controllers right here, just giving me access to certain actions in the game. These macro buttons tend to be tournament legal, tend to not be. It really just depends on who's organizing the thing and like with what they do and don't allow. And some people can get fucking insane with these macros. Just, I'm gonna put a picture up here of Daigo Umehara's, I'm gonna say fucking lunchbox, his dinner box over here. Look at how many buttons are on this thing, dude. This is before a lot of these buttons were banned in tournament play. Just imagine you're going to play Street Fighter and you're walking up with a fucking PS5 controller or a PS4 controller, and Daigo fucking Umehara shows up and he's got a goddamn keyboard to play Street Fighter against you. What are you gonna do at that point? So while it is cool that you can set a lot of these options in software, I think it is incredibly lame that there is no Linux support to speak of, especially with the rise of Linux gaming, with Valve's like Steam boxes and the Steam Deck, and Linux as a platform just growing in popularity. Like Apido, if you're watching this video, I know you're fucking watching this video. The main thing that I want out of all of these controllers and my experience with your controllers in general is just give Linux support to the software. I would be very appreciative of that. I think that'd be really cool. And speaking of software, there are a couple of quirks with this controller that I feel like I need to talk about, especially when we're talking about something like tournament play. Like if you want to take this thing to a tournament, it's interesting. Okay, so so let's say you're going to a tournament and the tournament organizers are using PlayStation 5s to host all the games on. There's an interesting quirk about PlayStation 5s in that they really only want you to use officially licensed controllers. And of course, Sony charges a wild premium to these controller manufacturers to make sure that they're officially licensed. So what does that do for you? It means that the controllers are costing like $300 to $400. That's a bit hyperbole, probably closer to $200 to $300. Like the fucking Razer leverless, like I'm gonna put a picture of it up here on the screen. That thing costs like 200 bucks. Like it's so not worth it. Yeah, this 8BitDo thing is like half the price of the Razer one. But what happens if you use an unlicensed controller? Well, it depends. There are some software updates that fix these issues, and then Sony updates the PS5 to then break the thing again so that the manufacturers have to update the controllers again. It's a cat and mouse game. So if you end up using a controller that's not licensed and fucking Mercury is in retrograde and you just happen to not be able to use your controller, what happens is you're playing the game and then 15 to 20 minutes later, the controller disconnects and refuses to connect again until you turn off and turn back on the PlayStation. So what some leverless manufacturers will do is they'll put a USB-A port on the side of the controller. And that's not for charging, it's actually to use a dongle with the controller to spoof a licensing signal to the PlayStation so that your controller doesn't disconnect while you're in the middle of a match. And notably, the 8BitDo controller here does not have that USB-A port. Now here's the thing, I don't own a PlayStation 5 and I don't know anyone who owns a PlayStation 5 to test this out on. So I can't confirm or deny that there will be issues with this controller in the future because it's not officially Sony licensed or some garbage like that. I don't know because of the tumultuous space that is leverless controllers and Sony's draconic licensing laws. I don't know if it'll work or not. So if you're planning on buying this thing and you own a PS5 and you want to play fighting games on that, like I said at the very beginning of this video, look up other reviews. Maybe someone out there has talked about this thing in the context of FGC play. I don't go to tournaments. I don't own a PS5. I don't know. I just don't. But I feel like it is important to mention that kind of stuff here, just so that way you understand what I'm lacking in my critiquing abilities. And one other interesting thing that I noticed. So with the way that the software works, you can't alter the controller itself. You're more creating a profile that then translates the buttons from your profile to the signal that you wanted with your customization. Basically, you need to switch to a profile on the controller itself to use your SOCD options and your macroing options. But if you flip on the tournament lock, you can't use any profiles on the controller. So your SOCD and macro options just aren't available with the tournament lock enabled. Which begs the question why the tournament lock is even there in the fucking first place. Like, I understand it on a surface level where it's like, oh, you turn that lock on so you don't accidentally hit the start or select button, you don't disqualify yourself from a match. I get that. That's a cool feature. But why the fuck does it disable all the profiles that you spent so long customizing on there? Is it like a tournament legality thing? Like, do they know what like the most common tournament legality macros and switches are on these things? I don't know. I don't know. It is just a dumb thing that I noticed that has certainly made this thing a bit harder of a recommendation, especially when I believe there are better options. at a more competitive price out there. Do I recommend the 8BitDo leverless arcade controller? Maybe. The build quality is high, the buttons feel nice, the software is cool if you're not using Linux. There's a lot of cool features on there, but there's a few little nitpicks in there that I'm not too big of a fan of. So it's not a 100% recommendation, but you know, it's still good. I would still say I'll give it a 7. I give it a 7 out of 10, this controller. I give this one a 9. I give this one like an 8.7. I give this one like I don't know, like a hot air balloon emoji out of 10. Who cares? These controllers are all good. I believe they're all worth the money, but don't take my word for it. Seriously, don't take my word for it. Go watch other reviews, please. Thank you again to 8BitDo for sending me these controllers for free and forever tarnishing my integrity as a critic and as a creator here on YouTube. Yeah! Hey, how's it going? I finally made it to the end of this video. You have no idea, like, what a gargantuan task editing this was, mentally, anyway. But it's finally done. I'm happy it's done. I'm happy that y'all can finally watch it. And here are the album recommendations that I completely forgot about. First album we're gonna recommend is Constant Companions Deluxe Edition by Jamie Page. If you're familiar with the Vocaloid world, then you might be familiar with Jamie Page. They've done some incredible work with Kasane Teto, doing the 3 major songs in this album are Machine Love, Rot for Clout, and Bird Brain. However, a lot of the tracks on here are still very good, and I would highly recommend that you listen to the whole thing. Cadmium Colors is a particular standout for me. I really enjoyed Cadmium Colors. It's some good, like, modern, kind of poppy, kind of like pop rock vibe to it, which I don't normally listen to, but it's very well done in this album and I had a good time with it. So that's a recommendation from me. Next one we're gonna recommend, you know what? Fuck it. Let's stay weird, dude. We're gonna recommend Timeless by Zolar X. It is, what year was this album released in? Like 72 or something like that. It is a British space-themed glam rock vibe where the gimmick is that the members of the band are aliens who came down to Earth to communicate with humanity via the medium of music. It's some insane shit. Like, the beginning of this album is them speaking in their alien language, and then the rest of it is in English. Just like, dude, let me tell you, Jetstar 19, Space Age Love, and Mirrors are just so good on this one. If you're down for more of a 70s glam rock vibe, that's what I recommend. And then, you know what? It is December, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna recommend Jay Schlatt's A Very 1999 Christmas. I've been following Schlatt for a very long time, and I'm genuinely stunned at how well he was able to sing a lot of these songs. And then he even fucking released a deluxe version of this album. And then what does he do? He goes and makes a deluxe version of this album that adds new songs. Like, Schlatt is unironically becoming Mariah Carey in the sense that he's going to thaw every year to drop more tracks for his Christmas album. Like, it's insane. It's a good album, unironically. As someone who fucking despises all Christmas music, this one album is one where I'm like, okay, all right, there's some good Christmas music out there. So yeah, big thank you to everyone who watched. Big thank you to all the members. Big thank you to everyone who joined after that last video that I put out. It was very difficult for me to do that, but I appreciate the feedback nonetheless. I'll probably make a video soon talking more about that on the second channel. There will be a link in the description or on the screen. I don't fucking know. There will be a link somewhere. You can go to the second channel and you can find more stuff over there. Have a good one, everybody. Hope you have good holidays. I'm gonna go crawl in a hole and hide away until the new year.